All right. So thank you everyone for joining us for our lunch hour live session on psychological safety and Agile. Our speaker, Anne-Marie Hazzart, is with us from Jamaica. Very excited to hear from her and get to enjoy her Scrum mastery as it applies to psychological safety. The super relevant topic being in Agile spaces and the still growing in adoption in companies of following Agile processes as opposed to more static or less responsive to change methods. So I'll go ahead and move forward to our agenda here. Just starting off with some chatting and logistical things. We usually have these in the evenings, so having it midday is just a little bit more is packed into this hour. Spend a few minutes on introducing this event and our speaker, and then also getting into the main event, which is the psychological safety talk from Anne. Any discussion that we have after that, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. And I see some folks are going hiking this weekend, getting to the coast, and cycling, which is wonderful. I definitely want to get more into riding bikes. I used to love it as a kid and have not tried it in Oregon yet, actually. I know it's a big thing here. And maybe an extra question is to send where you're tuning in from. So for example, I'm outside of the Portland area. And I know Anne at least is in Jamaica. So it's always kind of fun to see Caboose, Hillsborough. So a lot of local folks tuning in. Nice to see you all. And then as we're chatting still there, I'll go through some of the boilerplate messages. We have a code of conduct here. So I'll pass the link in the chat of where you might need to go. If anything, we try to walk things down pretty well here. But if you do experience anything that is uncomfortable for you during this event or any other Women Who Code event, you'll just use our code of conduct report form, which you can find at the link that I just sent in the chat. Basically be respectful of anyone who's in the meeting. And our mission is to inspire women to excel in tech. So anything outside of that purpose is strictly not welcome. So please do use that code of conduct if anything does occur contrary. So our mission, as stated, is to inspire women to excel in tech careers. And our vision is a world where women are representative as technical executives, founders, venture capitalists, board members, and software engineers. We do have a global reach with our mission and in our organization chapters. So we're here in Portland, but we also have events across the world, Australia, India, and other countries, and in different states. So if there's anything interesting going on in San Francisco and you're based in Portland, you can definitely attend that one. Or we have had people join from India, and they have been waking up in the morning as we're having our evening time event. So it's kind of fun to get to know folks from all around the world. Our movement is that as the world changes, we can be a connecting force that creates a sense of belonging while the world is being asked to isolate. We are coming out of this a little bit, always things in the news about things changing, but that's something that in 2020, when we started doing these events online, the feedback and community was saying that they really valued the ability to connect virtually if we couldn't be there in person. And it also opened us up to those global communities and folks a lot more. So I've really enjoyed getting to know everyone. And for example, connecting with Anne, who's over in Jamaica. So living representative of that. Please do join us on social channels. A lot of what you can find for us across the web is under the WW Code Portland. So that's our shorthand for Women Who Code is WW Code, not WWC. It's a different organization. So if you type that whole thing out, then you'll find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Meetup. And I'll pass some of these links in the chat there to tune into our Meetup page and also join our Women Who Code Slack. So it's been a little bit quiet lately, starting to pick it back up again. I think as people come out of the busy, dark winter days, they're wanting to socialize a little bit more. So super exciting to be there. And you know, if you're having trouble with some coding or a design challenge, you can reach out to the community there. We also have a really cool and active book club. So we read like Gift of Fear recently. I think coming up is Psychology of Wealth or something like that. So a lot of interesting conversations that we've had in the book club and other activity going on in Slack if you want to join us there. And let me formally introduce our speaker, Anne. She's an account officer with the government of Jamaica with 7+ years of experience engaging in meeting facilitation, policy evaluation and analysis, stakeholder engagement, coaching, and corporate training. She is a lifelong learner who is always striving for success, self-improvement, and seeking better ways of doing things. An Agile practitioner aiming to work smarter by using Agile methodologies to accomplish greater success in the work environment and in her personal life. A goal-oriented overachiever, excelling in the last annual performance in 3 main areas of responsibility, and creating an e-form for monitoring companies' compliance during the onset of COVID-19. She implemented Agile methodologies in the execution of her functions, and as a new Scrum Master, she is eager to transition into a technical role and in time become a dynamic Scrum Master. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and stop my screen share, and Anne, you can take it away when you're ready. Jazz hands.
Thank you, Kaylin, and thank you, everyone. It's great to be here. Let's see if my screen has begun to share. Let me know when you're seeing my screen, please.
So it's still loading on my end.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Great. All right, so it really is a pleasure to be here. Having met Kaylin some months ago, we started to talk, and then, I got this invitation to come here and speak. I would say I'm a bit nervous because I do a lot of speaking for work. So, but of course, it's the first time I'm seeing all of these, well, not all of the faces. Teresa is here to give me some support, and I'm hopeful that we'll have a very good presentation today. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to just start. Let's see. I'm not. Are you seeing the next screen, the next page?
We still see the first one.
Okay.
If you click one more time, yeah, there you go.
All right, so great. So we are going to look today at the history of psychological safety, its definition, its importance, the benefits of it, the absence of it, and yes, it can be absent from your teams. The stages, there are 4 stages, how you can achieve it, and the quadrants. And then we'll top it off with the question and answer. And I'm hoping that we'll have a fruitful discussion and we can learn from each other. So it's not all about me talking to you. It's about, us sharing. All right. So it was first introduced, the term was first introduced in the 1940s by Kurt Lewin in a paper that he wrote on organizational change. He recognized a 3-stage process that he referred to as unfreeze, change, and refreeze. Sounds a little bit strange, but we'll get into that a little later. Then in the 1960s, 2 persons, Shine and Dennis, they looked at the concept of unfreezing and how persons are receptive to learning. And we will, at the end of this process, we will see how much we have learned. All right, one of the first definitions is that it's the group phenomenon that reduces interpersonal risk. And this is an important factor that is good to incorporate in high-performing teams. All right, a definition. And I'm going to use Amy Edmondson's definition. And she was an organizational behavioral scientist. She went to Harvard. So she coined this term in 1999. She introduced the concept of team psychological safety, and she defined it as a shared belief, which is held by team members, that the team is a safe place for interpersonal risk-taking. Teams have the ability, have the freedom to share in this space, and they are likely to ask for help, encourage discussions about errors, seeking information, or if they need help on anything they are working on. And as we look at this, we could see some examples of, for those who are in agile environments, when you have a daily scrum, in your daily scrum, when the questions are asked, what you did yesterday, what you're doing today, and what challenges you have. And so, you know, there is the room for freedom to just share and be open and be honest. You can incorporate this in other meetings, you know, your monthly meetings, whether it's a club or in your organization, in webinars such as these, you know, in any sphere at all. You know, the first time I presented, I said, you know, it could be, you know, it could be implemented anywhere in your family, in your churches, anywhere that people meet together. All right, let's continue. All right, so Amy, she put forth this little cartoon here, and she wanted us to look at how many ways we could say, you know, and could implement psychological safety. And you might be thinking that, oh, how am I going to do this? Or how is this done? So let's look at a few of the comments that, the recommendations that she made. Okay, so you're starting off in a new group and you may be looking on and you're saying there are many unknowns. When COVID came about, there were many unknowns. So many people didn't know how to work from home. Many people didn't know how to have a Zoom meeting. Many people didn't know a lot of things. So we needed to collaborate and to say, okay, I need help here. This is a new territory. I need your input here. What do you think? What are your views? What do you think lies up ahead? How do you think we can face the challenges and, you know, overcome them? So a lot of these she put forth here, and you can look at them later and you can think back on some of the scenarios that you face while, you know, you were trying to pivot into a new role or pivot into, you know, working from home or whatever it was. You can just look at this slide here and, you know, it will help you to relate to situations that you have had to face or new situations that you have to encounter and how to implement psychological safety. So what then does it mean? So persons or teams in a psychologically safe environment are allowed to ask questions, to share openly, to ask for help, to say, okay, I'm having this challenge, I'm having this weakness, I'm afraid that I don't know enough, I'm afraid that I might fail, you know, just to share openly. And, you know, it's not, you know, they're not ridiculed or humiliated, but it's a free, safe space. You can also raise concerns, suggest ideas. And, you know, like when we look at organizations, we could say, you know, you might be in a meeting and you might be fearful or you might wonder if your idea would be accepted. And this allows for an implementation of this in an organization, allows for management and senior persons to recognize persons' ideas and to accept them. And even if they cannot be executed, but, you know, the value that is placed on the person, the value that is placed on the idea, and if it can be, you know, it's explored and executed as needed. There are challenging ways of working. And we look at the fifth industrial revolution. And a lot, if we look back, a lot has changed. When some persons came up with some of those ideas in the past, some of us even looked at it and said, oh, but this doesn't make sense, or this might not work. We think back at some of our great inventors, the person who invented the light bulb, the person who invented some of the tools. At that time, many of them, they share their challenges and say, oh, it was never accepted until the third, the fourth, the fifth, how many times after, because persons didn't see it. But because somebody doesn't see the value now, doesn't mean it doesn't have value. And as we look on, we saw that COVID came along and we had to pivot. So we had to get used to working from home or to have our Zoom meeting online. a lot of our activities online. So it's challenging a way of, it includes a challenging way of working on things, of working together, and to bring out the best in people. All right. It also creates an avenue where you can be open, honest, and be transparent. When we talk about transparency, another idea comes to mind for those persons who work in an agile environment or in a transparent field that, okay, stakeholders can come in, and if you use like a burn down or a burn up chart, or you use Jira, so some of the software like a Jira or a Trello board, you can have access to it and look at the progress of the work that is being done. So this is one of the other benefits. And this is one of the things I like as well. All right. Since we mentioned some of, the benefits already, I'm going to focus on some of the others. Like the opportunity to ask difficult questions. Some people, they don't like when you ask difficult questions because they might not see something from that perspective. But difficult questions are not something that person should shy away from. In fact, allowing persons to ask questions will allow you to see another perspective, another way of thinking, just to look at things differently, to implement something in a different way. There is the ability or the freedom to disagree. Persons might say, okay, I don't agree with this, or I don't agree with the way that you're doing this. I think it could be done this way or another way. And psychological safety allows for this to happen in a free environment where you can share and experience growth and accept other person's perspectives, other person's way of thinking. You can admit errors, you can find solutions. As we talked about the difficult questions. The difficult questions can allow you to say, oh, I didn't look at things that way. And that might be a solution to something that we were thinking about. So allowing for the freedom to speak and to share has the benefits. Let's continue. All right. So in an environment where psychological safety is fostered, dependability on your team members, you are able to rely on them. You might be having a challenge and you say, let's take, for example, the daily scrum. You said, what are your challenges? You say, I don't have all the skills to do this. And then somebody, maybe the scrum master or the product owner or another team member might say, let me help you with this. And having explored it, they might say, oh, I'm not the best person to deal with this. Sue or Mary or whoever it is, another team member, they might recommend the team member and say to you, this person has the skills to do that. What this does build is it builds trust, it builds dependability, it builds the freedom to share and to get help, as we mentioned before. There is structure and there is clarity. So roles and the plans and the goals are shared. So there are no secrets, as it were, or some persons know and some persons don't know. If you're in an open, psychologically free, safe environment, then these are shared. And if you have issues in that you are not sure about something, the freedom is there to ask. When we talk about meaning, if you spend so many hours at work, should it not be a free, a safe environment where you can share, you can ask for help, you can find greater value in the work that you do, greater value in the team members, learn what they are strong at and good at. Somebody might have a presentation to make and they are not strong enough and they might say, can you help me to do this? Or it is known that you are good at some task or the sort, the manager may say, okay, I'm assigning you this task. And she might assign a junior person to understudy you so that they learn from you as well. So there's greater meaning. And we think about also the concept of engagement in your work. If you are engaged, you find value, you find worth in what you're doing, as well as your team members, then it makes for a more meaningful experience at work. And there is greater impact in the work that is done, in the accomplishment of the unit's task. Right? What are some of the benefits to the organization? An organization that fosters psychological safety is one where employees will, want to stay. The employees will stay. It improves employee retention. The culture is such that you will not be ostracized or penalized for, sharing your opinions. You're comfortable at work, so you will produce more. You will feel that, okay, you can get help from somebody. It's a shared goal, shared mission. You can be less fearful of the risk that will happen, because if you can't do something, you don't feel secure enough, you feel fearful, or you have challenges, you can call for help or ask questions to get a greater clarity so that you can be better in terms of producing the results that are required. It allows for innovation and creativity. I like this because there is the idea about entrepreneurship. I remember the first time I presented on the topic that, I was trying to remember what it is. Some persons will go off and be entrepreneurs, but then you have organization that will allow you to be innovative and creative, and they implement some of these ideas. And so it boosts the individual as well as the organization. And of course, this is the right thing to do for people. You boost them and you get the best out of them. Let's look at what Richard Branson said. So he said, clients don't come first. I know some of you might not agree, and some organizations might not agree, but let's look at what he says. He says employees come first. All of us have heard it said before that, oh, the customers come first, and the customer is always right. But he continues to say, if you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients. If you make a psychologically safe environment, then persons will feel comfortable. They will produce more. They'll be more engaged. They'll be more comfortable. Then they will take care of your clients. Then your company will grow. All right, so let's see how we can create it at work. We can, heads of department, managers, leaders can create self-awareness. They can allow for the demonstration of, concern for team members as persons, value individuals. The same treatment that you want for yourself, you treat others the same way. Make people feel respected, feel like they value, feel like they have worth. Use up your facilitation skills when you're having meetings. So, sometimes some persons are more talkative than some persons shy away from public speaking. But when you have your meetings, allow persons to speak, and those that are, shying away in a little corner or just, not talking up, ask them what they think. Sometimes the quiet people have some great ideas, and we just need to pull it out of them. There are multiple ways of allowing team members, employees to share. Some organizations might say, okay, we'll have a suggestion box. And, suggestion boxes are not only for customers. Suggestion boxes are also for the staff. You know, some persons, as I said before, they might not want to come in the meetings and share, but they might write something on a paper and put it in the box. They might share with, if there is peer group, you know, in the organization, they will share with another person, or they might share with their direct supervisor, but allow for persons to share, show value and appreciation, promote positive dialogue and discussions, you know, allow persons to share. Don't discount their ideas, encourage ideas, encourage sharing. And, you know, in terms of information sharing, expectations, and commitments, these should be known by staff and encourage that, you know, okay, there's an open door policy. You can come in and speak about your issues. You can share ideas. All of that is important. Next, explain the reasons for change. So, you know, sometimes management might say to the staff, okay, we have to do this, but then they're not thinking that, okay, the staff needs to know the reason why, or for whatever reason, they might not choose to share. But then sometimes the staff has to go to the stakeholders and say to them, there's a change, but they're not able to answer the questions as to why is there a need for change, or can I input this here instead of that, or allow for the discussion to say, okay, this might not be the best idea, or this might not be the best thing to change, or the best time to change, or, you know, you can all think of scenarios that, you know, change was put forth, might not have been at the best time, or in the best area. You all have your experiences, but this is something that needs to not be, as it were, just put on somebody and say, okay, this is what is going to happen, and there's no discussion. Finally, own up to your mistakes. I mean, we all make mistakes. We are all human, and we might not understand something. We might not have been knowledgeable enough. Whatever the reason for the mistakes or the errors, we should be adult enough, mature enough. This is one of the things also that it allows you to mature and to say, okay, to own the mistakes. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I made a mistake here. This could have been done better. Okay, maybe if these two persons were trained in this area, or if these two persons were allowed to work together, then it could have mitigated against this mistake or this risk, or, you know. So there's a lot to explore and to look into here. All right, so there are 5 ways to help to create psychological safety in the office. We talked about some of them already, so I'm just going to talk about those that I didn't look at much. Make it explicitly a priority. Allow for it to happen. Encourage it. When you're having your meetings, facilitate it. Ask persons who are not speaking up to speak up. Ask persons what they are thinking. Ask persons what their ideas are. You know, find ways to pull them out. Yes, some persons are shy, but help them to understand that it's a part of their growth process. Create spaces for ideas, even the wild ones, and you can determine how wild it can be. And of course, you know, some aspects of it can be used, some aspects might not be used, but allow persons to be creative. Some things that look absurd now or wild might in 2 months from this or 2 years from this be the norm, you know? And finally, how do you embrace productive conflict? Because it's a psychologically safe environment. Somebody might just have a different view from you, and it might cause a conflict. Somebody might say it is better to do it this way, and you are saying no, it is better to do it this way, and you have to try and meet a middle ground. Somebody might disagree and they say, no, you cannot do that, or you cannot get this, or we cannot produce that. Whatever it is, it might escalate. Something, a simple thing might escalate into a conflict. So you can't just say, okay, you push it aside or push it under the rug. You have to deal with this. And so this is one of the aspects of psychological safety. And how best can you deal with it to allow for the team to continue and to continue to be productive and for the environment to continue to be safe? Let's go on. So let's look at the absence of it. If it's not in a team, let's call our friend here Sue. She might come to the meeting and she might say, the last time I came to the meeting, somebody shared something and it wasn't accepted, or I wasn't given an opportunity to speak, or somebody shared something and some persons turned up their faces, or some persons snickered at it, and so she might be sitting there wondering, should I speak? Should I say something? How should I say it? What will be the responses? And instead of her focusing on what is happening, she might be thinking of all of these reasons as to whether she should or should not, or how it will be viewed. Psychological safety is saying if you create an environment for persons to be safe to speak, then she will not leave the meeting and, you know, the idea is left in her head and she doesn't share it. And funny enough, maybe 2 weeks down in the future, something might happen and she might look and say, oh, if I had shared this, then it would have been the solution to this. Or if I was allowed to explain what I was thinking, then we could use it to build on that was there before. And of course, you all can think of so many scenarios, so many instances when you perhaps had an idea to share, but you were afraid to share it. You weren't certain if it would be accepted. You weren't certain, you weren't sure, or whatever it is. But in instances such as these, a suggestion, maybe if Sue is shy, she could also share with somebody beside her to say, oh, this is what I'm thinking. Or she might write it on a bit of paper, or immediately after the meeting, hopefully, she probably would be bold enough to say to somebody else or have it a small group discussion and say, this is what is my idea. But as we are talking about psychological safety, we want for you to create an atmosphere where ideas can be shared and they can be beneficial to the team and organization in any grouping that you find yourself a part of. All right, let's look at the 4 stages. So you have the inclusion stage, where there's a feeling of belongingness. The learner stage, where members learn through asking questions. The contributors, you can contribute your own ideas. And the challenger is the one who will look on and ask some questions, put forth ideas, and suggest significant changes. All right, so these are the quadrants. Looking at learner safety, you see that persons are able to ask questions, experiment, learn from mistakes, whether it's their mistakes or other person's mistakes. Look for opportunities. Collaborator, you engage in an unrestrained way. There are no limitations. There is the freedom to explore, to share, to collaborate with others. You might have an idea and you say, what do you think about this? And they say, oh, you know, I was thinking about this, or oh, I saw something, or we could do this. It fosters, you know, an open dialogue and for great ideas to be birthed. Challenges safety. It challenges the status quo. You know, sometimes we look at the persons who challenge the status quo and say they are mischief makers, they give trouble, they are disruptive, but there's a place for them because these are the persons who will speak up. They will be able to relate and tie in something that they saw being implemented somewhere else and say, could we look at this way? Could we implement this? These results could be had from this. And so it is that we should embrace all of them. Finally, we look at inclusion. It's the knowledge that I am valued, that persons are treated fairly, that persons matter, their ideas matter, and they can openly contribute to the team's growth, to somebody else's growth, to the whole mission of the organization. And so we have come to the question and answer portion, and we want to have a fruitful discussion. So I know that you all had some ideas. You may have made some jottings while I was presenting. So it's time for us to share. I'll turn back over to Kaylin and we will continue.
Right, so I didn't see any questions coming in the chat. I think a few of us are tuning in maybe during a lunch break and consuming, and that's also totally fine. So if you wanted to chat and not necessarily come off of mute, then I'll keep an eye on the chat. But if anyone wants to come off of mute now and ask any questions or even just say something stood out to you and use that as a conversation starter, we can do that as well. Does anyone have comments or questions?
I had a question. So I've had times in teams where there might be one or two people who are like really talkative, and it's sometimes hard to get like a word in. So I'm wondering like if anybody has any ideas on like how you can kind of get your word in too, or like encourage others to speak up too.
So I've had like training sessions. I remember the last training session that I had, and one person, well, it was like a new group. Well, it was like a new group of persons. And the person who was their direct supervisor, you know, he kept talking. And at one point, after he had answered maybe about 3 or 4 questions, I said, oh, just about here. So I had to stop him and say, okay, let us allow for other persons to share. And so it is, if you are the person who is moderating, if you are the person who is the manager, whoever it is that is in charge of the meeting, you have to take control and say, okay, let us allow for other persons to share. Let us get their input. And you can perhaps put in a caveat to say, okay, it's a learning experience. And as they share, then we will know if whatever they're saying is right. They will know and we will know. So, you know, and they can build on that. So that could be a good approach.
Yeah, that's a really good strategy.
I have a suggestion. You could also at the outset of the meeting say that you want to hear from everybody. So then that way it sets a precedent at first at the get-go that it's not just a solo, you know, conversation. And that I found has helped tremendously. It's like, I want to hear from everybody, and everybody just go, oh. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'd also say, oh,
Oh.
go ahead, whoever that was.
I was gonna say it's sometimes they don't even realize that they're talking over other people, or that they're, you know, taking up the entire time. And so I do like calling that out and just like acknowledging it, and so that people are aware of it. But I've also like experienced when I'm like feeling like I can't say anything, and then when I do speak up, it really helps when I've had a teammate who kind of, even if I get interrupted, or if I, people don't really give any feedback on what I've said and the conversation moves on, then they take the opportunity to kind of bring it back and say, hey, so, this person, Charlie, what were you saying about this and this? And I guess, reins it in. So it's really helpful when you have someone like that. And you can even kind of talk to people on your team who are a little bit more, okay with speaking up, and then kind of just let them know that, hey, I'm shy. And so, it's really helpful if I have someone who kind of like will say something instead of just silence, because that's really hard to deal with when you actually get the courage to say something and then there's like no comments. So it's just kind of like taking them aside and sharing that with them so that they can kind of help you to be a little bit more less shy.
I was gonna say that's a great strategy, Charlie, is like finding a buddy to help advocate for you. I was gonna say that I'm on the other side of that. Is I can tend to, maybe why I'm in this facilitator role, is I just talk, and I love talking to people and getting to know people. And sometimes, especially if I've had coffee, which I have just had, I'll just keep talking because I'm excited, and I would love people to tell me, hey, Kaylin, stop it. Like I can't get a word in edgewise. And I do have people like on my teams right now that we're at a point where they can tell me like, okay, slow down. I want to give it with you, but you started 3 different topics at once. So for me, as the person that's on the other side of that, I do like when people are, on my side about it, like, hey, I love your ideas, but also can we just slow down? Or if it's something where like I'm just off topic or something, I do like when people bring it up in like a friendly way, not like, I don't think I've ever had an issue where someone has been rude about it. But I do prefer that it's brought up. And then from like another perspective, if there is someone who, I've also been on the other side where someone's just going off on a tangent, and there's someone, especially in a position above you of authority. And so that's always a very weird situation, is how do you round that in? I don't actually have a good strategy for that. And what do? Do you just kind of raise your hand? Or I guess what we were saying earlier about framing the meeting that way, like, even if it's not me running the meeting, I can say, hey, I want to make sure that we hear from everybody. I know we didn't hear enough from this person, from Sue. Are there any strategies you have when that meeting wasn't framed that way, that you can sort of raise your hand or a flag or something during the meeting?
Was that a question for Anne?
It was a question for Anne, but if anyone has any ideas, feel free to jump in.
So you could start your meetings by saying, oh, okay, this is an interactive process, and we expect, persons to be speaking, as Teresa said. Or you could say, okay, if persons are paired together to work, you would recognize that some persons are shy. So you could say to them, okay, whether before the meeting or during the meeting, you could say, okay, if you are shy, you could put forth your ideas here before, or share with this person. Or as I said before, there could be like a suggestion box. I remember as in an online interview, and a question was asked, if you're the manager and you are generally busy and don't have time for your staff as much time, how would you interact with them and, kind of get feedback. So I said, okay, maybe you could have, send them, allow for them to have, a say by putting their ideas in a little box or something, or send you them via email before. So you could ask them to send them before. If you want for them to have some anonymity, then you could say, okay, just write them and put them in in a box, like you have town hall meetings or so, and you say, okay, do it like that, because some persons might be really shy, and then they're not realizing that they have such great ideas, so you find ways of just helping them to bring out their ideas, and then having, when you do read them and, they see, oh, they see your expression, then it will kind of build their confidence and get them to speak more.
Mm-hmm. A lot to dig in there. And as Skylar says in the chat, using raise hand features in these virtual meetings. I think like Teams, Google Meet, Zoom, GoToMeet, all these different platforms do have some form of this feature now. And as Mary is demonstrating how to use the raise hand feature, I assume you want to jump in here, Mary?
Yeah, thanks. I just had a couple of related ideas. I'm lucky because usually if there's a meeting, I'm facilitating it. So I'm extremely fortunate in that because I can kind of have some control over this. But one of the things that I do sometimes, if we need to be brainstorming something and I want to hear from everybody, I use a term that I got from one of my favorite authors, Anne Lamott. When she talks about writing, she talks about shitty first drafts. And I'll say it's shitty first draft time and everybody gets 60 seconds. And I'm going to actually use a timer, call on every single person, and you just talk stream of consciousness. And like, I'll encourage people. We know in advance there's going to be a lot of crap in here. A lot of it's not going to work. That is totally okay. The goal is brainstorm as sloppily as possible because we can get our ideas out, and it becomes very egalitarian that way. And so we hear from everybody, and hopefully the shy people, which I really used to be, get more and more comfortable, like, okay, we're just expecting crap here. So I'm going to go ahead and throw out the ideas I think I have. Doesn't have to be perfect. I know some of it's going to be garbage, but it allows us to kind of like everybody shares. And by the time we're done having 60 seconds with everybody, we've usually come up with some really good stuff.
I like that idea.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
Absolutely.
Especially framing it as that 60 seconds of like, we don't know what's going to happen here. And just letting them know that that's okay in advance.
Yeah.
We all really do. I mean, Anne already mentioned it, but we really, really need permission to not be perfect when it comes to practically everything. I mean, that's a lot of where our safety comes from, is just the idea we're all going to make mistakes. We don't even know what perfect would look like. So let's just share and get the ideas out there, and then we'll pick what we think is going to work the best and go with the next things.
Like the giving permission.
One other thing I've experienced when I've had one particular person on my team who is like continuously interrupts. I found myself just like not talking the rest of the meeting if I got interrupted, and I knew that that was not a sustainable way to do meetings. When I started working on it, I found a phrase that I was able to get the courage up to use, and it was just, can I finish first? And just like call it out, just be like, hey, you're interrupting me, but just like asking, just say, hey, can I finish first? And then get your complete idea out, and then you can let them, have their turn to speak, basically. And that really set the tone so that it happened less and less, and then it was like, okay, yes, this is someone who has ideas, and they are making you aware that you're interrupting them, and it's not being rude, it's just saying, hey, can I finish first? And it just kind of makes it click for them that, hey, they can't be like commanding the conversation every time.
I do have to bring up that as women in tech, we are typically working with men in a male-dominated industry, and stereotypically, women are better at communicating these kinds of things, and men are less good at communicating those things. Obviously, outliers on both sides, and lovely space in between and around. But just for the purpose of conversation, I wonder, and specifically, or anyone who wants to jump in, if there are any specific stories around the gender conversation there, as if, have you seen that this professionally is more experienced with men, especially more experienced men who might not be as open to other perspectives because they might feel that they know best, or any particular strategies around working with people like that?
I've not had much experience. Oh, but
Looks like
Lori
Lori might
does.
have, yeah.
Wonderful.
A nice shirt, by the way.
Thank you. I like it. You know, I'll
Represent.
always know it was from 2020 because of the mask. I love it.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, on the back it says keep calm and code in quarantine. So one story I've heard is, and I think it was about Barack Obama's cabinet, that the women, and I think Charlie was talking about this earlier, how helpful it is to have someone else in the room who notices getting interruptions or dismissals or the kinds of microaggressions that we're talking about that make things less safe. And so the women recognize this as a group and worked to amplify each other's voices. And I think if you can do that with the other women or any allies in the room that you have, sometimes, you know, if I just can't get my ideas going on my own voice, I recruit somebody who's really well listened to, talk to him one-on-one, and he can get it done. It's like, that's fine, good enough.
It's the idea that must live on.
Exactly. I don't need the glory if I can get the thing done.
Yeah.
That's one idea.
Yeah, thanks, Lori. Lindsay's also raising her hand here.
I definitely think that we experience this in the tech world for sure, unfortunately. And luckily, I have a pretty robust personality, and so I am able to get my word in there. But I do feel as though I am fortunate and lucky that I can do that. I will say one of the tactics I use is if there's something I want to say, I definitely like write it down and take notes of points that I wanted to say. And then I leave my sound on because I work virtually, so that as soon as there is a half-second break, I'll interrupt. But if you don't leave your sound off, there isn't enough time to interject. And so you have to leave your sound on, and then you're just waiting, but then you might be nervous. And so the fact that you've written out what you want to say, you can reference it, which is really great. And then if that doesn't work, I will follow up the meeting with putting my points at the end. I might add them in a Word document and say, these are the things that I wish I would have had an opportunity to share, but didn't get a chance to share in the meeting. And I would like to be able to say this next time in another meeting. And so that kind of calls them out to maybe call on me and ask for my opinion in the next meeting.
And they can see the value of what you're saying because you've summarized it in, you know, those executive summary bullets for them, so they can see, oh wow, we missed out on this treasure trove of information from Lindsay. And love that you're bold and brave to say those things. And that's a great tip to also leave the sound on. For example, I was able to just kind of giggle at what you're saying and because I related to it. But if I was, you know, I wouldn't unmute just to laugh. I don't usually. So that just adds to, I know we're in this space where if the dog's barking or the kid's crying, then you don't want to like have that disrupt the meeting. But at the same time, if you can have that quiet space, staying off mute adds to virtual collaboration for sure.
Yeah, and I only turn it off when I'm ready to say something. So you don't have to have it off, but like as you're like, you know, like, oh, I want to say something, then you can turn it off. You don't have to like have it off for the whole meeting, in my opinion.
Yeah. We also have one more comment from Laura, it looks like. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't quite hear you, Laura.
She might be having a challenge to unmute.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from you. I can hear it very distantly. Is it something where you could possibly get closer to a speaker or type it out maybe? Slightly better. Oh, and let's see. In the meantime, while she, we'll listen for you, Laura. Brianna says, when I facilitate meetings, I watch for who is coming off of mute and say, were you going to say something to follow up with them? Yes, being an ally in the meeting. And I think, was it Anne also like watching people's faces?
Yeah.
So if you're, oh, like you are listening for that, like the little inhale of breath and then the, oh, never mind. Never mind. I didn't get my word in. Little strategies like that can help.
I like Laura's, no, was it Lindsay's? Lindsay's idea, and it does tie in with Laura's, because if you don't get the opportunity to speak, then you share it. You write it down and you share it. And then if you're not concerned about who gets the glory, then you can say, okay, at some point they'll say, oh, this idea wasn't mine. I got it from this person. And because it's a whole team effort, then, you know, you come together and you share. And even when you send the email, then you could share it, send it to all of the persons in the meeting, so they'll know that, okay, the idea was coming from this person. What it also will do in the future, it will, allow for the persons who are moderating to say, oh, okay, maybe we need to be facilitating more to say, ask for opinions and ideas from other persons, and not allow the talkative ones to be always talking, to, give opportunity to the quiet ones as well. Yeah.
Yes, and as that external processor, so I realized kind of what, where's the name, where we were talking about how, oh, it was Mary, the talking for the 60 seconds of potentially garbage. Sometimes I'm just externally processing what I'm saying. So I'm aware that I probably need to stop talking. There are a lot, potential for a lot better ideas, just to, let those internal processors have a platform, or time to walk away and come back. Okay, we had this meeting to onboard everybody to the idea. Now let's all brainwrite separately and then bring it back at a different meeting or something like that. And I do have one more. Oh, I see. Okay, thanks, Charlie. Had to drop off. And Anne, you're sending some more resources that actually relates to.
Yes, my apologies. I didn't get the chance to look at that one, at that slide, to go to that slide.
That's okay. Laura was actually asking for books, articles to read. And I also like HBR. Did you want to talk through any of those resources before we wrap up that you just sent?
All right, so pretty much they are the reference material that I researched before I compiled the document together. So some of it was about the history, some of it was other material that I just researched and put in psychological safety in Google, and I got the information and just collaborated it together. In terms of books, no, I haven't seen any books yet.
I was just going to write radical candor in the chat with the note that I think I've heard people have mixed reviews on it, but my takeaway so far has been trusting that what you have to say is good feedback to give. Whether, it's kind of scary to say something or they might disagree with you, getting the information out there, or at least journaling about it, and then gathering your thoughts on how to say what you want to say can help a lot. So I know we're a little bit over time. Thank you so much, Anne, for speaking with us. I really enjoyed your conversation. I've got pages of handwritten notes, partially to help me pay attention, but also just mainly because this was really great content, something that we can walk away with practical steps and solutions to implement it in our workplace. So thank you so much. The recording will be up on YouTube. I'll send, thank you, Carol. I'll send the recording when it's up on YouTube to the meetup list. And thank you to everyone here for participating and engaging in the discussion, asking questions and suggesting other solutions and building on the conversation. Thank you
Thanks for
so
having
much.
me. It was great being
Thanks,
here.
Kaylin.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, ladies.
Have a great rest of your day.
All.
Bye.
Bye.